All right, we're back. We are COMP397. That's web game programming in the fall 2017 semester at Centennial. We are week 4, part 1 of our broadcast. We're talking about finite state machines again. This week, we're going to finish off our finite state machine example. I also worked through my own gamepad. I kind of figured out how to use the gamepad with JavaScript. I will try and show you some of that. We'll go over that again another day. That's kind of not in the plan for today. But it's not that difficult because we can use the navigator object in JavaScript to detect if the gamepad's connected. That's how it works. So kind of straightforward. And the gamepad is built into the HTML5 spec so that you can, as long as you have the supporting browser, you can plug in a gamepad like Xbox 360 or a Xbox One controller or a PlayStation controller, and the navigator object that's built into HTML5 will detect whether you've plugged in or not, and then we just have to tap into that. And I've already worked out the code, how it works, and I'm excited to let you know how it works, not this class, but the next class. Let me take a look at some other stuff. One of the things that I want to look at today, going back out, is the stuff that's due next week. So if we look at our schedule for your project, and I'm just going to go here to our project setup. Please, works. Let's take a look here. So here's our project. So again, it's 80% of your final plus 5% we did for your contract. So we're into part 2 now. So next week, which is week 5, your second version of your game design document is due. And what you're supposed to do with this is take some feedback, if any feedback that you've gotten since I've seen it and whatever, and feedback from your peers, and any new pivots you've done in your game design. So for example, you had an idea of what to do, maybe you changed something, right? If you've made any changes, mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics, anything like that, and you wanted to include it in your document, that's what you put in there. So I'm looking for those changes and some more detail, because you should have more of an idea of what you're building now, right? So more detail of what you're building. Now your first playable, which is actually when we actually see something, is not due until week 7. So that's like 3 weeks from now, okay? So it looks like a lot of time. Or 4, is it? Yeah, we're at week 4, so it's 3 weeks from now. So next week is this one, and then 3 more, like 3 weeks is your first playable. So there is no exam in this course, 10%, and you're going to do a little presentation on that day. So not now, but again, 3 weeks from now. And the presentation is not going to be a full presentation like you did last time, where you went through the whole pitch. You're just going to say, here's my update, here's my demo. I wanted to see your demo, right? So you're going to demo whatever you have in your game. Now the game's got to work. You got 3 weeks from now to put it together. And if you haven't started thinking about how to do that, that's going to be an issue, because there's lots of stuff. Now, with the things I'm going to give you today, next day, and maybe the day, you should have enough to get going. Okay. But I would have started already if I were you, right? So if you haven't started at all, you have no base, no code base, then you're behind, right? And I urge you to get going. That's all I'm saying. And you're smiling, which means there's no code base. No code base. All right. So just letting you know, just from what's due when we come to that point. So week 3 is just the game design document is what I'm looking for. So that's worth 5%. And then what it looks like is a link to your GitHub. Now, in order for you to give me a link to your GitHub, there must be some kind of code at that point, right? And then afterwards, your first playable 10%, I'm definitely looking for a link to your live site. So you have to have this thing live for a few weeks from now, right? Somewhere. So one place you can look at is GitHub Pages, which gives you free hosting, right? Another version of your game design document would be required by then, with some screenshots of anything you've got, anything you got visually that you're going to show me. That's what the difference is. You can't really provide screenshots when you haven't got any kind of game, right? And then the last thing, of course, is, again, your updated link to your repository. A couple things that are due by week 3, or by week 7, I mean. And then after that, it gets heavier. because your alpha will be due by week 10. Week 10 is after the break, right? All right, so just going to move on here, but I just wanted to make you aware, just remind you that we're still on track for the things we're doing. And I just want to go into what we did last time. So we've been working with this project template. Here's the project template. I'm going to bring up VS Code here for a second, and I want to kind of bring up what we have so far today, right? So I'm just going to drag and drop my project template in here so you can see what I've got. All right, so where last we left off, we have this idea of, oh, we have to reload something because I've updated my mono. This state machine, and the state machine lives inside the main, the game.ts file. Notice that I have something called current state right now. We may have to rename this. And then I have something called config.start. We kind of created this in our config folder, config.play and config.end. We don't have the play and the end scenes, but we do have some kind of start scene, okay? Now this start scene right now just says goodbye cruel world. That's what this thing does, right? And I want to make it so that it's a hello world. The click button can change stuff, but I want to make it so that the click button is actually taking me to my next screen, right? So I want a next button or a start button or something, right? So I want the start button to get me going to my next screen. In my middle screen, my play scene for now, I want a back button to take me back. That's what I want to do today. I want to take me back to my first scene, and a next button to take me back to my end scene. In my end scene, I want a back button to take me back, and I should be able to traverse all through these scenes, backwards and forwards, and I should not be able to have a loss. Now, if you've done that, what I'm actually setting you up for, this is why I'm doing this, up for a start screen, a play scene, and an end scene. That's what I want, right? So the start screen is really what I want to have in here. And so I want to kind of say something like, welcome to my game. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back in here. So please pull up, by the way, I am using the last version that we worked on together. So if you look at GitHub under Centennial, I do have this project template that I'm working on. This is 7 days ago we worked on it with this thing. So please pull up this template, or if you've been following along, then just pump up the project that we were working on last week. All right, so I'm just going to change stuff. I'm just going to just reduce this so you can see more of this. So it says hello world. I want to say something like, you know, welcome to the game, whatever the game is, right? And instead of a click me button, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to rename this click me button. So I'm going to rename symbol. I'm going to call it the start button. I don't have a start button yet, but I will get one. It's going to be called start button. Okay, so we need to make one. I'm going to make one in a second. This is my hello label. That's not really my hello label that I want to use. What I want to use for my hello for my label is almost like a welcome label. That's what I want to make, a welcome. Oops. Right click, rename symbol. Call this welcome label. Okay. Right. A welcome label. That's what this is going on here. So welcome to the game. This could be called whatever it's going to be called. Here's our start button. And this is not going to say goodbye, cruel world. I want this actually to change state. I want to change state. So this is going to be the start button. Okay. So first, let's make a start button. So, you know, if you notice what we had on our desktop on the project template, we had some assets, and inside the assets we had, and one of them was this click me button. I want to just quickly bring it up and modify it and make start button. Now, luckily, I've kept it in PNG format, so all I have to do is modify the text values, and we should be okay to go. I don't know where this whole team's not here today. Like the group. I don't know. Huh? Yeah, I'm really concerned. So what I mean by that is, here's the click me button, and I want to change this to start. And I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see it. There's these control handles for the text. I'm just going to make it so that they are, well, that's not what I wanted. Yeah. I just want this thing to be center, so I'll center it. There you go. Oh, I just overrode the click me button. Anyways, I want to save as. I don't need the click me button anyway. File, save as, and I'm going to call this the start button. Start button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the click me button because I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to go back into my files, move this to trash. All right, so the click me button's gone. And I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code. And inside my game.ts, where I start loading my objects, I'm going to change this to start button. Start me button, start. Okay, start button. Now we should be able to launch this as is. I haven't made many changes here. I'm just going to, I'll keep this up actually. I'm just going to pull up a terminal window. Here's my terminal window. And I'm going to navigate there. So I'm going to go CD, desktop, and then into my project template. And you can see that I have this. I'm going to go light-server, and it should launch my server in a window, right? Now, if there's a problem, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the problem, right? And we'll see what it is. There's 400 assets. Click me button is not available because we got rid of it. Why didn't it work? Because we didn't transpile. We have to do that for the first time. Visual Studio for the first time, even though we have up in here we have this task.json file. It won't kick off until we do Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B on a PC. So once I've done this, I've transpiled all my changes, and now we should see the click me button, right? But now it says start. So I don't want it to say goodbye, cruel world. I want it to, when I press the start button, it's going to go to the next scene, okay? We need a scene for it to go to, A, right? And we need some way of switching between the scenes, B. Let's do the scene first. I'm going to go into my scenes. Right now, I have my start scene. In fact, my start scene and my regular scene are almost going to be identical. So if I look at my start scene here, it's almost the same. I'm going to copy it and paste it. But for now, I'm just going to, and again, I don't have all the controls I want here. I would love for me just to be able to duplicate this. I'm just going to copy, and actually, if I paste it, that'd be bad. No, I'll make a new one. New file. We'll just call it play.ts. Okay, this is my play scene. And then in my start scene, what I'm going to grab all this stuff inside of here. Actually, everything, including everything. And then I'll rename it. It's just easier. Okay, why? Because this will be play, right? It's of type objects.scene, and it's going to be part of the scenes module, right? I need a reference to the asset manager for now. Instead of my welcome label, this welcome label will be the play label, and eventually you're going to get rid of it. This is just placeholder stuff that you can get rid of when you make your game, right? So we're going to rename this the play label. Rename symbol play label. Instead of this next start button, right? I want to have a start button. I'm going to have two more buttons. I'm going to have a next button and a back button. Okay? So I need two buttons here. So let's rename this one for now. We'll make this one the next button. And we'll copy it. We'll copy the name of this. I'll make it the back button. We'll put that in there first. So okay, so next button, and we'll say back button up here. So back button and next button. So play label and a back button and next button. Okay, this doesn't change. The load queue, la 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 la. The play label would change. Instead of welcome to the game, right? We'll say game playing. This will be where the game is playing, right? And instead of the next button being here and it's going to load start button, it's going to load the next button. We don't have that yet, but we'll make it. And we're going to change the location of this button as well, right? So that's not right. And we're going to copy this and also put in another button. I've got an extra main there. We're going to put another button that we're going to call the back button. So we're going to have two buttons. Back button, which we're going to change the location of. And now it's 320 by 340. So 320 is in the middle, 340 is down. We're going to leave 340. But we're going to move one to about 100. So let's say 100 by 340. Oops, that's the back button. And we'll put it, aside. So we'll make it like 400 on the other side. May not be even, but it's okay. So the next button is going to be to the right. The back button is going to be to the left, right, of my screen. If you wanted to make it equally spaced, we know that it's 640. And if you divide it by 0.25, or sorry, quarter, so it would actually be 160, right? So 320, yeah, 160 and 480. Thank you. But I don't know if it's going to be large enough. 540 and 100, maybe. You're going to have more space. No, I know, but I don't know if it's the button's too big. No, I don't know. Doesn't matter. We'll keep your values just because you said. We can always. we'll figure it out. How about that? All right, let's do this. Let's make the buttons. So that's why I kept fireworks up. So I'm going to say I'm going to make a next button. I'm not going to save it over my start button this time. Here's my next button. File, save as. I'll put these buttons up on Slack in a second. Next button. So for people who can't get them or can't make them, like me. And then we'll do back button. They're all going to be blue buttons, but they're just going to be little buttons that make us go forward and back. Oops. There we go. File, save as. We'll say back button. All right, so that's the back button, the next button, the start button. And now we have to load them in. We have to do some, so we're just prepping right now, okay? That's all I'm doing. I'm just prepping. I'm preparing for all the scenes to change. So I'm going into my asset manager here, and I'm going to just make sure that those buttons are also part of this. I'm just going to put a comma here, right? And I'm going to put in a we'll call this the back. I'm putting in alphabetical order, the back button here, which we'll call the back button over there. Right. So all I'm doing is listing all the buttons in order, okay? And then the other one will be the next button. Just alphabetical. You don't have to. You can put them in any random order you want. But here what I'm doing is I'm preloading all my assets. That's what I'm doing here. My preloader, this part here, my asset manifest defines where all my buttons are, right? And in my init method, it preloads all my buttons, my images. That's what it's doing. Okay, let's go back to that scene with that play scene we're making. So we've got our buttons. So that's how we can go and say, hey, get my back button or my next button. It's going to display them where we want them. It's going to say game playing. Now, these next buttons and all this stuff, I need a back button dot click as well. So let's put the back button dot click here. And we're going to also add the next button to the scene, which we don't have yet. The button has been added, but not the back button. So I'll put that on the scene too. Okay, just to give you an idea. So this will be back button. Here's my back button dot on. And on click, we want it to do something. We want it to go back. So for now, just to make sure that the scene works without us switching, what I want to do is I need to send a message. When I use these buttons, I need to send a message back to the game object somehow when I click this. That's what I need to do, right? And the way to do that is to put something in the update function, right? Because the only way I can check to do that, for it to propagate back to my game.ts, is to have some method that I'm running in my update, right? That's going to change a value, a global value that I have access to, right? Think about it, right? There must be some kind of game value that I'm propagating through my entire file so far anyway, the way we're coding it. Change the structure later, right? But for now, I want to be able to change the current scene, right? Because if I look at my game.ts, if I go to my game.ts, the way it's working right now is I have this idea of current state. My current state has to change, right? And what I'm saying is I update my current scene. That's what I'm doing here. So whatever my current scene is, right? But I must be able to get back to my current state at some point, right? I must be able to change my current state where I call main again. I'm not going to call main one time, right? I need to be able to call my current state method multiple times, main, and pass in the current state value inside main somehow, right? If you think about it, okay? Because it has to come back here and switch from one state to the other. And in fact, what it has to look like is my current scene, right, is equal to new scenes dot play, right, which now comes up because I've already made that scene. I haven't attached it to index.html yet. That's something I have to do, all right? But that's how it would work. It would attach it here and then pass in my asset manager into the into this. So my current scene then would change when my state changes, okay? So that is correct. My challenge is, how do I make it change? So update, it updates the current scene, whatever that current scene is, right? And in my current scene, if you think about the update method of my current scene, it can't really accept anything because that would break the scene class, right? It would break the scene class. But is there something that I can do, right, where I pass back a message, you know, where my update method of my scene class, right, when I update the current scene, does it return the current scene or something like that? Because what I want to do is as soon as it does that, if my current scene is changed by a click, then I want to go back to main and switch. That's what I want to do. Okay. Lots of ways to accomplish the same thing. And I've done it in different ways many times in the past. So again, I've got my current state, right? And I'm going to main right now. But this doesn't have to look like this. The main function, right, in my code could take a current state, and the current state is just a number, right? So I could say something like this, right? Because current state right now is a global number, a global method. I could also pass current state. That's another thing I could do. I could pass current state off and make a reference to current state somehow, right? Inside my scene, but it's not a reference type. So if I pass it as a value into my constructor, it has to come back out somehow. Has to come out somehow because it's a value. It's a value type. It's a number, right? It'd be different if it was something else. If it was a reference, then I would just recall the reference. No problem. I can just, it's just an address that I'm passing back, right? So if I pass it into my scene, it's going to come back out of my scene, right? Or I'm just going through possibilities here with you guys, right? Or if the game itself, the main game.scene itself, was of type a new object called the game object. The game object itself would have a current state. Or I could have a state machine class that I could pass around. That's another way of doing it, right? So there's many ways to slice this one. I want to do it the simplest way, like I did with the earlier class today, and fix and optimize later, because we have lots of optimization to do in our game over the course of the semester, right? We're only at week 4. And I want to get things going today, right? So the easiest way to do is to modify our scene class. So every time I do an update, it actually returns some kind of value, right? If that makes sense. I'm telling you it's the easiest way. Okay, I'm not telling you it's the best way. Easiest way. So when I update my scene, current scene.update, what I'm actually calling is, if I look at the scene class for a second, so the scene class is an object. So here's my scene class. Bear with me. Right now, my scene class, my update returns void, but I can make it return a number, right? And if my update returns a number, so if I make it return a number, right? And in my return, by default, my default return will be a 0, right? I could change, of course, that, right? Because it's just a default value, right? So that's the one thing. So I can pass it into my constructor. So in my constructor function, right, for my scene class, I could pass it back out in as one value and out as something else, and it would be checked every time. Every frame, I'm checking to see if I've changed, if I'm going to go to the next scene, which I would have to do. I have to check every frame, because if my player dies in a particular frame, he's going to be catapulted into one scene or the other, right, in real life. So this is how it would have to be. So every frame, somewhere in the update functions where it's going to be checked. And this is maintaining scope. If I didn't have to worry about scope, if my main game, as an example, my game class was not in an IFI, I wouldn't have to worry about any of this. I would just share those things, and it would just cascade down all the way to the end. Because I want to maintain scope and eliminate the global variable, I have to pass it into my constructor for now and pass it back out. Later on, I could have it as an object, right? That's part of the global namespace. For now, let's leave it alone. So we need to return this, and we're going to take something into our constructor. So if I go to my scene class now, if I go to my my original one, my start scene, my update method, is it messed up? Well, no, because we've overridden it, right? Okay, hear me out now. Remember that I'm going to be listening for a return value. So this has to return a number, right? And because it's returning a number, it's going to return the current scene, whatever that current scene is, right? So I'm going to say this dot current scene, right? So that means I must have some kind of variable that keeps track of my current scene here, right? But if my variable is going to be on every scene, then I might as well put it inside my scene class, right? Any variable that's going to be part of all my scenes must be in my scene class, because it doesn't make sense for me to always instantiate them every time for in things. So let's suppose that, and hear me out here, I make a private variable, right? It doesn't have to be public. Actually, if I do make it private, it wouldn't work. Variable, right? That is only for inherited members, right? I make a protected variable called, and this is one way, by the way. You can also use static as well. That's the other way of doing it. Have a static variable that's part of all the scenes. It keeps track of all the scene states, right? That's something else that could happen, right? That's another solution. It might be even more elegant than the way I'm thinking, but let's just do it this way. So we'll use a protected variable called current scene, right? Which is a number, which is of type actually gets a number. No, all right? That's what it is. So my current scene is a number, and then my current scene, then I could access if I save this, and if I go back to my start scene, then current scene would be something that I can return, right? So I could return this dot underscore current scene. Make sense? Because it exists. It exists. A private, it's a protected variable, and I'm returning that back out. It's a number between 0 and whatever. 0 meaning the start scene. 1 is going to be the, whatever, and that's how it's going to return, right? Now I need to adopt this same stuff for my next class. So I'm going to just copy this whole thing and go into my play scene for a second. I'll share this with you in a second. Just watch for now, because there's going to be some changes. All right. So this current scene is what's going to be returned out every time at the minimum. I'm returning that out. But going back to my start scene, in my constructor, not only am I going to take in my asset manager, but I'm also going to take in my current scene, which is a number, in somehow. I need to pass it in. I need to take it out, right? Now I could do it also. I'm just putting it out there. I could also do it in my update function. Pass in current scene, return current scene. And there's nothing have to be in my constructor. Now, I know you're cringing, all right? But it doesn't really matter how I do it. I need some method. I could also make a method. I can make a get current scene or set current scene method, a setter or a getter to do it. Okay, whether they're doing the constructor in the update method or something, I need to pass it in. For now, to keep it simple, we're going to pass it into our constructor. Okay, just as a decision. You can disagree. You can make it yourself another way. But what I'm going to call this is current scene. And it's going to be a number. And then inside my constructor, I'm going to say that this dot underscore current scene is equal to the current scene that I get in from my constructor. All right, so I need to do the same thing. Actually, I can just copy this whole constructor because it's exactly the same. Again, when I start thinking exactly the same, I think to myself, should I not put this inside my superclass, right? Something to think about. And now, because I added this in here, right, it's still inheriting from object.scene, but it also has an extra thing in this in the constructor that's different than object.scene. The scene doesn't need that, but this one does. Again, if I pass both these things in here, you got to think to yourself, should I do that in the scene class and not here in my scenes, my scene objects? Okay, we'll talk about that after. All right, so we've done this, we've passed in the scene, and now we need to detect when the scene has changed. We'll go back to start here. So I'm pressing the button. I'm pressing the button. So here's my button, right? And when my start button is clicked, right, I want to move to the next scene. But I'm not going to move to the next scene here. I'm just going to change state. Something like this. This dot underscore current scene, right, is equal to config dot, if I'm going to say play, right? Because that's going to be my next scene. It's got to make sense. Why I put the configs in there in the first place? Because they're a friendly way of knowing what's happening, right? I'm going to the next scene, going to the play scene, right? And then whatever that current scene is going to be returned out. Every frame it's going to check. Even if I change it now, it's going to check the frame to go to the next scene, right? So I'm returning it. Similarly, using this methodology, if I go to my play scene, and inside here, when I click the back button, this dot underscore current scene is equal to the start scene, right? So config dot start. And if I choose the next one, I don't have this yet, but I'm going to put it in there. This dot underscore current scene, right, is equal to config dot end. I don't have an end scene yet, but I put it in there. I've already coded it, right? So I got the end scene, whatever. Now I've wired up everything in my scene files, and now I have to wire it up on the index.html as well as in the game.ts. I got to make a change in the game.ts in the update function. Game changes, it's going to fire off the object to my to the main function to change the scene. That's what it's going to do. Again, there's more than one way to do this, so please forgive me if it doesn't comply with your method of coding. But here we go. So let's go back to my index.html. Notice that in my index.html, I've already got a start scene. Question for you: should I put the play scene before or after start, or does it matter? What do you say? Start is going to go to play. No, start is going to go to play. Play must exist, right, in order for a start to know about it, right? Think about it, right? Right. So should all your scenes be loaded? But I recommend you load it before, is what I'm going to say. So even though it's not required, I'm going to say load it before. So copy this line. Instead of, you can do it in reverse order. So you're going to say play here, the end scene will be first, right? Because play needs to know about end, right? And start needs to know about play, and game needs to know about start. That's how it has to be. So in reverse order. Okay. Now you don't have to. It doesn't really matter because you're adding it onto the cache, right? This whole cache of code, when it gets loaded in, it gets loaded in at once, actually, right? But it still gets loaded in some order. Like this order gets loaded in, and then it attaches everything together. So let's just, this is how it's worked before, and it works fine. All right, cool. So we did this one. Let's go back to my game.ts. My game.ts, we need to make a bit of a change. So again, we've got these 3 buttons. That's one thing we've added in, some little bit more asset, right? And now we got a problem, right? It says my current scene is equal to the new scenes.start, and I got to pass in the current scene. So current scene. Now, is it current scene or current state? Because scene is a whole other object, right? So it's current state that I'm passing in. Because it's a number. I'm passing in the asset manager, reference to the asset manager, and the current state so far. Okay? Cool. So I passed it in. I click the button. It comes back out in my update. Right? Here's my update. Current scenes.update. Now this returns a value, and you can see that update actually returns a number now. Right? So I got to say that if my current update, right, is not equal to current state, then main. That's what I'm going to do, right? So it's all going to be done here in one line. So if current scene.update, right, is not equal to, if something's changed, right, is not equal to current state, right? If it's not equal to current state, if something's changed, then go to main, right? And it's going to do that every frame. Keep checking to see if my main is working or not, right? Okay, things we have to think about.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
You go to your start of DS, because I'm still not convinced that you have to go to the start.
That you have to do what?
Load the play scene before the start scene. Because I don't think you referenced the play scene in the start scene.
I did. If I go to my start scene, right? Then if you notice down here, I go to the, I don't reference it. I just go to the play. I change states. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I didn't. No, I don't.
So yeah.
I don't really. That's what I'm saying. It's no need for the order. The order is not necessary. I just put it in order.
The reason for that structure is so you don't have to worry about how
you know about it. Yeah, but let's leave it alone because maybe in the future that we need to know about play. I don't know, right? And if we need to know about play, it's better to put it in reverse order, right? So that it gets loaded in reverse order. So one thing knows about the other thing, knows about the other thing, right? And now again, it's going to get hoisted anyway to the right order, right? And that's what JavaScript does. It puts everything together and hoists it to the top. The way the loading works with the page, it's sometimes better to put it in reverse order so it's loaded the right way. All right, so we've saved everything. Let's just save all, file, save all, right? And we've got this running. Now let's see, do we still have a running program? So far, so good. If I click start, it should take me to the next scene, but it does not. Let's see what I get from a error perspective. And this is where we're going to do some troubleshooting. Let's see. I got nothing. Sorry, let's go back. So, where?
Game.ts.
Yes.
It has a current state.
Well, only here. It's never going to go to start again. So, so current state is set to config that start. That start should be, a number, and if I look at config dot, let's just do some troubleshooting, okay? So config dot start is 0, right? That's what it starts off at, 0. And then in my game.ts, I say, well, if my current scene dot update is not equal to the current state, then go to main. If it goes to main, it's going to say, okay, take the current state, and if it's a config.start, then do this, right? However, if it's config.play, then do this. Sorry? You both, all of you talk. Say that again. No. Let's do some output. Okay, just this. Sorry. Say that again. It's one person now.
Checking the current state, local variable,
Right.
the output of the current state update method.
Right.
Which is why it's always going to be.
So we have to say current state, then, okay, so this is a nice idea, but what we want to do is say something like this. Current state, well, yeah, but the problem is that once we do this, we have to reference the update function again.
Just get the return of the update in a variable, stuff like possible current state. If the possible current state is different from the real current state, you update the current state.
Let new state, right, is equal to la la la. Right, that's what you're saying. Let new state is equal to this. If new state, I like your thinking, is not equal to current state, then current state is equal to new state, and then main. Would that be sufficient? We don't have a default. The reason why it looped in main is because we don't have a default case, so it doesn't error out. Like, because we didn't set it, there's no default state, so it'll just keep looping in here forever in main. Because they're yes, that's right. Once we get to here, we're looping infinitely inside main. All right, let's try this now. So we saved it. Let's save it again. Let's save all. Make sure it's all rebundled. Good, we're good. And start. Okay, cool. So we did it. Well, this is good. This is a good sign. We did it. And by the way, your buttons look okay, right? But somehow it didn't wipe out the other one. Why didn't it? I didn't tell it to. I wrote to it, and then I replaced it, but I didn't wipe it, right? I have to destroy all objects on the current scene. Next one. And the easiest way, it's almost like I got to clean up after myself a little bit, okay? Because I'm not really disposing of the old variable. It's still there, and it's still been drawn, right? So before I switch, right, before the break, I've got to go into something like this. I got to say that the current scene, whatever the current scene is, right? Remove all game objects. Remove all children. I want to do that. I want to remove all children, everything from the scene, right? Before I switch it. I want to do the same thing here. But if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm in the current state, I only have to do it once. So I do it here. So I'm going to do that every time. Every time I come here, if I come to main, I'm in the scene, even if there's no children. Whatever I set it to be. Well, current scene, remember, is a scene class.
Oh, right.
So I'm going to remove all children. Current scene is a container, like a stage. There's no stage.clear.
Okay.
I believe.
Because I suppose that if you want to save the state of the scene, come back to it later.
No, there's no clear. There's these are all the things you can do. Stage and container are the same.
Okay.
It's just another container type. Stage actually is derived from container. So
So the reason I'm asking do some stuff, you want to come back and have it within.
That's a totally different thing, right? Yeah, we have to think about that. If you want to remember going back, like let's say for example, if you go in one door and you remember come back the other door, no, that's some other things you have to think about doing, right? And then you have to think about redoing the finite state machine in a different way, right? Like maybe saving that scene in a array somewhere, like a old scene or something array, and you keep all the objects. You just basically what you do is you duplicate or copy all the scene to a scene array, right? And you keep track of it. There's many ways to do this thing. It just means memory management again. All right, so let's see if this works. So I'm just removing my children and then I'm doing the scene. All right, so I saved everything. Uh-oh. Well, no, it's what it's saying is update of undefined, right? Because when I remove all my children, I don't have any children to remove. Well, I don't have any children to remove, right? So if I take this line out, this is the other line that I killed, right? So I'm just trying to think with you guys so you can think how I'm thinking, right? Here it is, right? Now I can see it and it's there. But if I take this scene, if I put this back, my scene, and because I've never done this new, I never did the new, right? And that's a problem, right? Okay, hold on. So here's the other thing we can do. What if before I switch, when I'm from the scene that I'm coming from, I remove all my children, right? Because I'm coming from my scene, I can remove my children anytime I want. All children, remember, the scene itself is a display list. It's just a list. When I remove all my children, I purge everything. But if I've never done a new, if I've never done this, no scene. And that's why this is failing, right? So if I go back to my my scenes, my scene.ts, my start.ts, and I want to go to my next scene, I'm going to go here, but before I move on, I'm going to get rid of all my children. So I'm going to say this dot remove all children. That's a cleanup I'm doing. And I'm going to do the same thing when I switch scenes. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to my play scene and do that twice too. Every time I move, I remove my children. I remove all my children when I move on forward and back. Again, going with what Eddie said, you could create a scene list, a list of scenes, and then you could. What you could also do is in the scene list, you could push the scene, the last scene to the scene list, and then remove all the children from that. Like make a copy, push it to the scene list, and then when you go back, it preserves everything, right? Without actually having to have been put on the scene in the first place. Sorry? If it's not null. Yeah, you could do that too if it's not null, but might as well do it here, right? So it cleans up itself. All right, let's go back and try this again. So I remove all my children, right? So here I'm removing children, here I'm removing children. And let me go back to my game.ts, make sure that's also fixed because I don't want to have a problem. And we're gonna, again, guys, bear with me because remember, this is an iterative process. I want you to understand my thinking. It has nothing to do with how we can do it. Okay, there it is. So there's the start, right? Let me just refresh. Now, why am I getting all these errors? Okay, I'm not. I just took a second. Start. Yay. Back. Start. Yeah, pretty good. So now we've got two pieces of our state. I'm going to give you the last piece, which is the end scene, which is going to say game over. Back. And we should be able to navigate forward and back. The other thing I want to also do, just from a type safety perspective, is I want to know how many objects are in my scene. How many objects are in this scene right now? This one here. 3, right? So I should never have more than 3 objects in my scene, okay? In this particular case. Sometimes, though, if you don't remove some stuff, you have extraneous objects. And we don't want to have those. That's a memory leak, right? Same thing with the stage. We want to also check how many objects on the stage. How many objects are on my stage? One, right? Should be only one object ever on my stage, and only this many objects in the scene. So we're cleaning up after ourselves, and so we keep our memory usage low. Okay. Let's fix the other part, and then we'll add the I'll push everything to GitHub for you. Right, so, and then we'll take a short break. All right, so here's our current state. We want to do the same thing with the next one. So let's just do the next one. So we'll say current scene is asset manager states, right? There is no end scene. That's why I'm getting a problem, but we're going to make one. So I'm going to go into my scenes folder, make a new file. I'm going to call it end.ts, right? I'm going to go to my start scene because that's the closest one that I need. I only have one button there. I have two buttons in my play scene. So I'm going to go to my start scene. Start.ts. I'm going to copy everything. I'm going to go to my end scene and I'm going to paste it. So these scenes that I'm making for you are just placeholders. Instead of my welcome label, we're going to call this the game over label. Oh, no. Game over label. Okay, there's my game over label. Instead of my start button, we're going to have a back button. Back button. Excellent. Okay. And this is going to say, my game over label is going to say game over. And this is going to be the back button. Okay. I'm trying to reduce the amount of things. And this is going to be going to previous scene, right? So we're going to go to, actually, that was correct. Config.play. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. Now we're missing one more thing in my index.html. Just to keep with our theme, we're going to put the end scene first for now. Not really necessary, like we said. But this will do end, play, and start in reverse order. Okay, if we go back here, we should be able to go navigate now. So start, next, game over, back, game playing, back, welcome to the game. So we can traverse from one scene to the next. First, I want to check two things in each scene. How many objects are on my stage, right? And how many objects are on my scene? And I want to do that, right? Let's say every frame for now, okay? So for my scene, for my game itself, when I do my checking, inside the bottom, before I do a stage.update, I want to do a console.log. Actually, I'll do a console.info. Console.info. Different kind of, it'll look different on the console. And the message will be stage objects, right, plus stage.numChildren, right? So the number of children in my stage. Notice that it's a property, so I don't. It's not a thing. So this is the stage number of children. I'm going to copy this thing, and in my start scene, I'm going to go into my update method, and before I return this current scene, I'm going to stage. I'll say this number of children. It'll be start scene objects. I put a semicolon on the other one too. Hold on a second. Yes, I did not. I don't need it, but it doesn't matter. I like to be thorough. Same thing with this one. So I just start this one, right? I want to go to play. I want to put in my update method. I also want to put that in. And instead of this, will be play scene objects, number of children. End. So here's my update method. End scene objects, number of children. All right, so now you should see a number. Notice that my stage objects is 1 and my scene objects is 2, start scene. This is good, right? I should have 3 now, right? My stage objects is 2. Uh-oh. That's what I was worried about, right? Because that's why I did this thing. And let's see if it accumulates. How can we fix this problem? We need to remove the current object from the scene, the stage. Dot remove child and whatever the child's called. But I wanted to do this for you guys to see this because I don't want to mess up, right? Next, okay, stage objects 3 and scene objects 2. Let's go back. Stage objects 4. So actually what I'm doing is I'm adding stage objects to scene. And this is why I'm showing you this. This is not right. So let's fix. Yes? Should do it anyway. Trust me, this is because this is JavaScript. This is JavaScript, right? And you may think that the container is empty and destroyed, but it's not. Fill the memory. Let's remove all the children to be safe. Better, especially when it comes to sounds. Guys, I know this. I've done this. I've used CreateJS for very many years, right? And you do a sound, you removed all the children, you removed all kinds of stuff. You removed it from the stage. Sound's still playing, right? So let's remove all the children just to make sure. It's a cleanup, almost like a delete or destroy method. That's what we're doing. And in fact, what we should do is in our scenes, we have a destroy method if you want to be really clean with your scene class, a destroy method that destroys and removes all the children from you, right? That we can call outside of the method, outside of the scene, right? That's the right thing to do. Let's leave it for now. We want to keep it simple, like I said, and let's see that this thing doesn't change because this was what I was afraid of. All right, let's go back. Let's fix it. So how do we fix this problem? Well, we know that in our game.ts, right, we're doing this. Current scene is equal to new start scene, blah, 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 right? Well, I need to make sure that I remove, there's 2 possibilities. Either remove all objects from the stage. So not remove or remove child, because when you specify a child, you need to know the name of the child. And if sometimes the way CreateJS works is even if you name the child, it won't remove it. Remove everything. And we want to remove everything before, right, we go there. But here's my current scene. When do I ever add it back? Right? So I add stuff to the stage somewhere, right? So I add my scene to my stage at some point in time. So here's my stuff, right? And then where do I add my scene, my scene container to the stage? Notice my scene container is up here. So here's my stage, my canvas, my assets, my manifest. Here's my current scene, right? Which is of type object.scene. Where do I add my current scene? Right? So this is okay. So if I remove everything and then I add my current scene, I'm good, right? So what I would do is before you move, right? Before I move to the next thing, I would just do a stage cleanup. And I would do that right here at the top. Stage, remove all children. Every time you come in here, right? What that would do is remove everything, clear from the stage, and then when we come back, we add stuff to the stage. If I ever come back to main again, remove all children again. So it's like a cleanup cycle, right? Now let's see if that works or if I get a problem with it. No, this is good. So I got stage 1 object. Okay, start scene 2 objects. Next, stage.1 object. Now we're working. Now we're playing, right? Now we're doing fine. Now we see that the memory management is working because the stage should never be more than 1 object. Does that make sense? I need to explain this stuff to you guys because if I don't go to the nitty-gritty details like this, when you make your game, you'll never understand how this finite state machine works. You'll be swimming around trying to figure out what's happening. Now you know, and it's been recorded, so you can always go back and say, oh yeah, I forgot to remove everything. So everything inside the main function has a reason for being, right? Okay, question for you guys now. We don't need it anymore. This is just for us for troubleshooting. I have a question for you. So first, let's get rid of all the extra extraneous stuff. We'll get rid of this. We know this is working now, so we can get rid of it. And inside of our other things as well. I want to get rid of those things because that's just going to take up cycles. We don't have any room for cycles today. Like we want to make sure our computations are as low as possible. Because remember, on the web, we don't have nearly as much computational power as we do with C++, let's say, or C#. Okay, cool. So we've done all that. Let's go back to our scene. We've got a clean slate. I can move back and forth, and I'm confident now when I move back and forth that I'm actually visibly shifting between scenes, right? Now I want you to think of it this way. Every time we go to a scene, it's a whole new world. The scene has an unlimited, well, except for memory, unlimited amount of coordinate space, right? The only thing we're seeing is that little window. This is the viewport that we're seeing into our game. But the game could be really large, a big, large map outside of the viewport, right? Question: how do I add more? How do I add more levels? I have 3 levels now. Really, if you think about it, I have 3 scenes: start screen, level 1, and an end screen. How do I add more levels? What would be the? I want you to tell me. What would be the process to add more levels? Think about it. So I add new state, new scene, right? Folder, right? Copy it from somewhere. Copy the framework from some other scene. Doesn't matter which scene it is, because you don't want to retype everything, right? That's number 1. Next, what do you do next? Add it to the index.html, because you have to. Our index.htmls are manifest. If you don't add it to the index.html, it'll never appear. Think. That's second. It's one thing is adding the scene. Second thing is adding the index. Third thing is one more thing to do. Define the transition. There's 4 more things. There's 4 things to do total. Here's what we have to do. In my game.ts, right? I have to define it here. I have to define another one of these here. I only have start, play, and end. And in my config dot in my scene file, I need to add another scene in here. Start, play, maybe level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and then end. A unique identifier. I'm going to show you how to do an enum later on. Not now, but it's very similar to this, where I would just add the number. So the number, so all these things are friendly words. A friendly enumeration is what it is, to help us identify what the scene is called without, oh yeah, the end scene is number 2, and the play scene is number 1, and we don't want to remember those things. We just know we want to go to play, we want to go to end, we want to go to level 1, we're going to go to level 2, whatever we're going to go to. And it's going to, on the background, those numbers are going to be taken care of for us, right? So that's really state machine in a nutshell. You have your state machine now. It's working. You may not be liking it, because you might think about yourself, how could I optimize this? We will optimize as we go forward, one step at a time. So let us do some stuff with GitHub now. I'm going to go, I've made all these changes. I've added stuff, but I want to just basically say completed state machine, right? At least to one level, right? So all these things are staged. I'm going to click this checkbox, and I'm going to push it to GitHub. Now, if you didn't get all that, it's okay. Please look to GitHub and make your changes. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, let's add some game elements. Let's start building our game, all right, for the first sentence. And I'm going to build my game elements based on my template. I'm not going to use my template. My template, I'm not going to mess up. I'm going to leave my template aside, and I'll make another game based on my template, right? Because my template is for your game. Please don't write over my template, the one I'm giving you on GitHub. Take it, make a new folder, right? Completely new folder, make a new GitHub repo, all right? With this stuff, get rid of the .git folder inside of it, right? So it doesn't know about all the other commits, right? There's different ways of doing that. You can download it from GitHub. We'll talk about that. Rename it, rejig it, right? And I'm going to make this mail pilot game that I've been talking about with the COMP397 folks. I'm going to start it today with you guys. We're 4 weeks behind them, which makes sense because they have everything from the get-go. They're using Unity. They don't have to worry about scenes. They don't have to worry about anything, right? On the plus side, you know the guts of how things are working, right? And they have no clue about how that works. When you're in Unity, everything is done for you. Here, we're doing everything from scratch. Okay, so let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll start our game.